Howdy, folks. Welcome back to episode 14 of the Craft on Tap podcast, where we talk about growth marketing for RIAs. I'm your host, Stephen Beach, and my co-host, Faustin Weber. Today, we're going to talk about personal versus firm branding and which one we prioritize. This question just came up in a meeting the other day that I had, and I thought it'd be a great podcast topic for us to kind of go through, talk about our approach, talk about, pros and cons to prioritizing a personal brand versus prioritizing a company brand, maybe how those two things intersect, how it varies depending on the size of the firm, how it varies depending on the tactic that we're talking about. So just at a high level, the question was something like, for LinkedIn, should we be posting from our individual profiles or should we be posting from our company profile? So I tried to do my best to answer that question in less than 5 minutes, but now we're going to devote an entire podcast episode to it because I think it's a nice, juicy topic that we can kind of dive pretty deep into, and hopefully some of you will find it helpful. So yes, let's dive in. So Faustin, I'll kick it to you. Where do you start answering this question?
So obviously, as you said, the question's different based on the size of your firm and what goals you're trying to accomplish. I mean, pretty much all professional service companies run into this, right? If you start off as a solopreneur, right, a solo practitioner, you're trying to provide the service. You are the brand, right? People want to follow you, connect with you. You're the one delivering the service. You're doing it all. This is pretty similar to someone who breaks away and starts an independent firm. Like when you're first getting started, trying to make your way to 50 million or 100 million, you don't necessarily have other team members. So you're the one that people relate to, connect with. You're the one providing the service. But then inevitably, as you scale, you take on more team members, more advisors so that you can have more clients. And so you're kind of left in this bind of how much should I focus on myself and my personal brand versus the overall brand of the firm? And so we're going to get to that, I think, just based on the different sizes and sort of how we think about that. But I thought first, Stephen, we could just talk about, from a marketing perspective, what gets the most engagement, right, across these different platforms. Not even what goals are you trying to accomplish with your marketing efforts, but just technically speaking, how are the
platforms set up?
Yeah, how the platform's set up based on what we've seen. And so just starting with LinkedIn, because I think that was one of the original question that sort of prompted this episode. The company pages don't do nearly as well as the personal accounts on every metric that you can possibly think of, right? In many cases, we see posts where we have thousands of followers on a brand account get so far less impressions posting a similar type of subject, similar type of topic than something that's posted on an employee account. And that's something that's just pretty consistent overall. You're going to get better reach with posts that are done from the personal account. And I think that makes sense, right? Because I know we're trying to get more data into this podcast. I know it's been one of our initiatives. And so
big data guys.
Yeah. Huge data guys right now.
Yeah,
that's what we're trying to do. So, a recent study that LinkedIn actually shared shows that employee shared content gets 8 times the engagement than just a brand company shared content. They also said that the average employee network is 10 times bigger than the average company account network. And that makes sense, right? I mean, your personal account, your personal brand is all the different people that you've ever networked with. All the people that know you, your friends, colleagues, past acquaintances, people from, firms that you worked with in the past. I mean, your network is just so much wider. And more importantly, people want to follow a person. They want to follow an individual. They want to build trust with an individual. People are more skeptical now of, companies than ever before. And so we see this across all of the different platforms, but especially on LinkedIn. And so just thinking running through the different platforms, Substack, that's been a big growth channel for personal branding in the last 1 to 2 years. Same thing. People can have a newsletter, but it's got to be from a person. Ones that are done from a company or a firm name don't get nearly the engagement, right? That people want to feel like they're connecting with an individual. Instagram, same thing. We've seen personal accounts that we've converted into the pro account. You just get a lot better traction getting started. TikTok's the same way, right? The crazy boost in personal creators is just a great way to elevate someone's personal brand. And so across all these different platforms, I think just generally speaking, the personal accounts do better. They get more views, they get more engagement, they get more followers. Would you agree with that?
No, I think unless you're a really cool brand, like an enterprise level household name brand, this should hold up, and everybody should be nodding their heads like yes. I mean, unless you're Coca-Cola or somebody, I don't know if Coca-Cola's a cool brand or not. It's just everyone knows what it is, and you might follow that page. You might do some really cool, funky things with the page. But I think for the most part in financial services, yes, it's probably even more so, right? If we pin down that study, the LinkedIn study, the 8x engagement from a personal profile versus the company profile. I mean, I would think that it's even more than that, because it's just such a dramatic drop off, I guess, as far as like trusting or knowing a brand name when compared to, knowing an advisor's name personally. So I think too, like back to the breakaway example, when you're a breakaway advisor, you leave whatever the wirehouse or broker dealer or, wherever you're going from, you might not even have a company name. So it's just that you might need to, we've done naming exercises where we're literally coming up with the company name. So not only does nobody know your brand, you don't even have not only do people not know your company brand doesn't even exist. It's like, there's nothing to know. It's just the person. So I think, especially as you're starting off, if you're an advisor that's got a smaller book, or you're kind of earlier on in your career or something like that, I think that would be even more so the case. Like, people just literally don't know what your company is, nor do they really care, and they don't want to connect with it. They want to connect with you as a person. And LinkedIn too, right? LinkedIn's supposed to be a professional networking platform. That's what it started as. That's what it still is. It's become more of like content creation more than we've ever seen before, but still it's all about, professionals networking with each other. That's like that's their intent, I think. Only secondary to making money off of us. But, I think like that's the point. We're not really wanting to follow brands because it's just not built for that as much. So, I would add that. Oh, one more thing, Substack, in case people aren't familiar with Substack, it's like a newsletter publishing platform, you could call it, right? Maybe like a medium.com, if you ever heard of that. But it's a platform that does a really good job of giving you the tools to send out, like usually it's weekly or maybe it's monthly newsletter, and then generating, you're trying to convert, readers into subscribers, and then, sharing your newsletter through or your thought leadership through a different channel, that we've seen kind of like help certain advisors grow their personal brand, with a different platform, so just wanted to add that in there. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, nice. I think you said a really interesting thing about there are exceptions to that personal being so much more successful than a company account. Like, you can build a company brand on LinkedIn or across these different platforms. It just takes that much more work, right? Like, you got to be commenting all the time. You got to stand out in the comments with, usually it's something funny or saucy or a hot take. And it just requires so much more effort, time, energy to really stand out with a brand new brand name, especially if you're just an advisor getting started, or you have a very small team. You're in that 50 million or so assets. So typically, like we just took on a client recently, and it was funny interviewing the client's clients. And I said the firm's name a couple of times to them. They're like, "What is that?" They had no even understanding of the firm's name. And, that was just validation, confirmation of what we were already planning to do anyway, which was essentially just go full scale, the individual's name on Reddit, the individual's name across the different accounts, the individual's name in terms of sharing expertise and posting, right? The individual's name in terms of helping him get referrals. And so I think that the brand conversation comes, as you begin to scale. But if you're under 100 million, under 75 million, under 50 million, right? You don't have a lot of other team members. Just focus on your personal brand, I think, is a pretty good way to think about marketing, because you're going to align with how all the algorithms of the platforms are set up right now.
Yeah. And we'll get to how to scale the company brand here in a little bit, as you get bigger, I think, from a marketing sense anyway. So that's coming. But yeah, by the way, what did you say when that client didn't react to the company? Were you just like, oh, never mind, that doesn't matter anyways? to the company name when you mentioned
they were
that?
like, no, they were like, no, I just, what is that? And I was like, oh, it's, the advisor that we're talking about. That's his
Technically, it's an LLC. Yeah. Never mind. We'll keep moving.
And the person I was talking to started laughing and just said, well, no, I always would just recognize him by his name. That's how I know it's being presented to me. So,
There you go.
so that's maybe an extreme example on one side, but, I do think it gives us a good lesson, I think, to sort of validate and acknowledge some of the other stuff we're talking about. Okay, so just some other quick studies, just because I did the work to bring them in, right? And we just want to make sure that we,
that's
just give a little bit more validation.
So we call doing the Lord's work right here, just bringing in
doing the Lord's work, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so Brand Builders did a study just this last year. 74% of Americans are more likely to buy from, recommend, and do business with an individual who has an established personal brand, right? 82%, this is from an Edelman study, I think it was in 2024, 82% of people are more likely to trust a company whose executives are active on social media. Okay, so just two more pieces of data points to sort of validate what we already know, that an individual is someone that we want to follow. That's how we build trust. And that is a really good starting point for getting somebody in the door in terms of awareness of your firm, awareness of your company. Okay.
So the last one thing there on the last part, the 82% of people more likely to trust a company whose executives are active on social media, from Edelman. Really good. A shout out to Pete Caputa from DataBox. If you guys haven't heard of DataBox, it's a business intelligence software tool. They do a great job with pulling together reports and bringing in data from all different kinds of sources, and then you can build these beautiful dashboards with it. But I bring him up because he's a really good writer. He's on LinkedIn. Sharing all kinds of like behind the scenes type of activity, like what they're doing with their marketing, what they're seeing from their clients. He'll even ask for feedback on like their product roadmap, all these different things. He'll give advice to, his niche is marketing agencies. So he'll be giving advice to marketing agencies on how, they're running their firms and that kind of stuff. And it's all from him as a founder. And he kind of, to me, he's like on the forefront here of this trend of like founder-led content marketing, which we've seen a lot in the last 2 years, especially. So I just want to give an example. If you want to go check him out, Pete Caputa, Caputa, and you can kind of just browse through his content on LinkedIn. You'll see the type of top of the funnel building he's doing for his company just by he's leading the content marketing approach from the personal side. So it's pretty cool.
Nice. I think that's great. Yeah, he's fantastic. Okay, so all right, so that's all well and good, right? A lot of our listeners, a lot of the people that we talk to, a lot of our clients are much bigger than that, right? They have 300, 400 million, 500 million in assets. They're high growth, high performing. They're growing substantially on a year-to-year basis, especially with our help. Or they're, just like a little bit of a plug. They're growing pretty substantially.
They're going to want to attach themselves to the rocket ship that is Craft Impact, and then we just ride together. Yeah,
100%. But I think if you are one of these high growth firms, or you're one of these established practices, right, the brand becomes much more important in a lot of ways. I think as you scale or as you grow, right, it becomes much more important. You're not the one delivering. You don't want to be the one delivering, working with all the clients, right, at all times. That's why you're growing a practice. That's why you hire other advisors. That's why you're able to bring on more clients, is that you don't want to be working with them directly. You're trying to build a business, right? And so it becomes much more important to focus on the brand while not losing elements of the personal brand that you've worked so hard to build up. And so what we've seen a lot is, and what we've helped clients with, is sort of establishing key members of your leadership team that we really like to still lean into from a prospect generating type of approach or focus, where, people still, like we talked about, they want to build an authentic, trusting relationship and connection with someone. And that's going to be better done on a personal account level, on a personal brand level. That's what's going to sort of bring them in the door. So we want to elevate different members of the leadership team, right, to sort of increase the potential reach. So you're not just 100% reliant on the CEO or the founder, but you're sort of spreading it out so that you can get a bigger reach. Mm-hmm. While at the same time, you really want to emphasize and spotlight your process, your values, your investment philosophy, new milestones that the firm is accomplishing, new team members that are coming on, how you're improving client service by bringing on new CSAs. And so that's why I think like the overarching focus as you get bigger can be more sort of it's like the brand, the personal brand and the firm brand end up complementing each other, right? Where you focus on the leadership, but then you're also sharing across your different company accounts some of the more of like firm news, firm announcements, different things like that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of reasons that founders want to get out of the client service delivery in professional services firms in general, but specific to financial advisors. I mean, yeah, you might want to turn from you're probably wearing 50 different hats first of all when you first start your firm or when you're early on, but two of the primary hats, you're the business owner and you're also a wealth manager. You might want to shift a little bit more into the business owner side of it, where you're like building the business or working on the business instead of working in the business. That's a very common one. So we had a client. I think this is a good way to put it. A client here in Tampa, Instrumental Wealth, David Silver, told me like initially one of his key goals was to institutionalize the marketing and business development at the firm. So I thought that was a good way to summarize it. Like, take it off of him personally, or at least not make it as weighted on him personally as it had been for the previous few years. But yeah, like really set up a system, like set up a process, set up the team, institutionalize it so that it runs without you. So that's a lot of hard work. It takes time. It takes intention. It takes business planning, all these things. And we're just a piece of it with the marketing, but that's, I think, the reasons for that, for doing that, trying to get out of the client service model can be many, but I think a lot of times it's, these founders or co-founders want to kind of get out of the client service delivery so that they can be freed up to do other things, or they might want to do a passion project, get involved in, some other business or who knows, whatever it may be. That's where I think it comes in, where you want to start to, like, as you're growing, start to hire some other wealth managers, you start to hire more staff to deliver that same level of service that you were delivering, right? And the same level of trust that your clients gave you as an individual. That's where, it takes a lot of work to kind of pass that off. But, a lot of times I think it comes from wanting to be freed up to do other things. Also, let me just take a pause just to make sure that everyone knows I'm not drinking a beer on the podcast. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this is just a kombucha. It looks pretty suspect. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there. Yeah, I've been pretty self-conscious about that for the last,
that's for all of, I thought that's for all of our YouTube or Spotify video watchers, of this podcast. So,
just, we're dead.
The ones who enjoy us, the ones who enjoy watching us on live.
That's right. Okay. So,
I think that's well said. And I think it's important for us to think, we're not saying that you lose the importance of personal branding, right? Maybe we talk a little bit more in specific. So we had a client who wanted to explore one of her passion projects, just like what you're saying, Stephen. And so we helped her sort of build out and strategize around her Substack. And she's a great writer, and she was able to create an entire newsletter just focused around her thoughts around different financial topics. And it's tangentially is the word I'm looking for, related to what the firm is doing, but it's not the same thing, right? It's her sharing thought leadership pieces, her takes. She can be a little bit spicier than necessarily always having to follow the firm. And she ended up blowing up, doing great on Substack, increasing her audience size tremendously on Substack, was featured in Help Me Grow, which is a platform, or which is a part of Substack that promotes her content to many, many Substack users, right? Hundreds of thousands of different users. So she ended up, gaining something like 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers in a matter of a couple of weeks. And that actually led to a number of discovery calls and eventually clients for the firm itself. And I just use that as a really good example of how personal branding, right, when it's focused on demonstrating expertise, sharing specific topic knowledge, really leaning into the prospect that you're going after, but sharing, just on the personal accounts can help supplement and complement all the work that you're doing on a company account where you're sharing the process, highlighting company milestones, et cetera. Yeah. So I think that's a really good example of how you might lean into one while also trying to, focus on making sure you're branching out with the company brand as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. I think that in that case too, she's a phenomenal writer. She's a really good content creator. And like you said, she can have kind of a fresh take, a fresh perspective on anything from personal finance to investment management philosophy, and then has a really good, unique way of conveying that information to her target persona, which she's super in touch with, right? Where it's like we're opening up a new platform or kind of a new channel, if you will, where, not all the traffic and not all the subscribers are qualified. And in fact, the vast majority are not, but that's okay. It's like a creative outlet for her. And then some level or some number of those subscribers are qualified and they kind of fed up to the company, right? So it's like this, you got this personal brand, and then you have these channels off of that personal brand that are all kind of feeding up to the company brand. And she did a great job, and the company did a great job of blending those two things. And kind of what that did is just enabled them to kind of jump into new spaces, Substack in this case, where other firms have not been traditionally. And still, there's really not a lot of firms that are in there that have a good strategy of how, Substack from a personal advisor is going to, feed their company goals, right? But they had that figured out. They had that intention. We pulled the strategy together with them, and then I think she did a great job executing on it. So it was a really cool project. So anyhow, just to add a little more color there. I'm not recommending Substack to everybody. It's a lot of work. You have to, she had some really unique abilities there that she capitalized on. But it's an interesting thing just to think about, right? Like the personal advisor using a separate platform, completely separate from the firm, but somehow it still feeds up to the firm, right? So I think we're going to see more and more of that, by the way, in the next couple of years, next 6 months to a year, even. I think we're going to see more of that, like advisors kind of branching off and finding these little. Reddit is another good one.
Yeah,
you could argue Twitter, Instagram have been the same type of thing for a little while. With it, certain advisors do a really good job personal branding, and then once you start digging, you click the link in the bio. It's like, oh, damn! Actually, this advisor works for this firm. Okay, cool. Now I'm on that company's website. Now I'm kind of perusing through. So I think it can supplement, it can intertwine, but you have to think about how they're going to support each other. Otherwise, you can get a little bit too fragmented, a little bit too diluted, I think would be the potential risk.
Yeah, nice. Figure out where the overlap is with them.
Got to find that Venn diagram overlap,
Yeah, love Venn. Maybe we can put a Venn diagram together for this episode. That'd be great.
I would really enjoy that. Yeah.
Company personal branding, that would work very well.
Yeah. I'll get on that.
Overlap. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about specifics here, okay? Because I feel like we are talking a little bit more in generalities, and let's just take LinkedIn. Like how can these different things work together, right? So in a utopian world where everybody was a great writer, we had unlimited resources, I do think it would be phenomenal for the leadership and also the individual advisors and even the CSAs to be posting across different platforms, sharing
even the
topic
CSAs,
knowledge.
Dude. Exactly.
Even the
Especially
CSAs.
the CSAs.
I mean, everyone's posting, right?
Because there's some love here, by the way. Yeah. They
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because many of them are on the track to become an advisor, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
they
They're
have
holding
a
up
lot
the
of
client
knowledge.
service
They're
model.
learning a lot of knowledge. Yeah. So that's the utopian world. But the reality is, obviously, not everyone has that time. Not everyone's a great, intuitive marketers. Typically, what we would suggest or recommend is that you have a founder or a co-founder. Hopefully, they have some sort of personal brand at this point. But then you position the managing partner or somebody else in leadership to have 2 or 3 individuals, depending on the size of the firm, that's really sort of propping up a lot of the thought leadership type of posts and making sure that we have a really well fleshed out profile on their different platforms, whatever we feel like our target audience is on, whether that be Substack or LinkedIn or Instagram or anywhere else. We also want to make sure that on our company blog, which again is not going to get that much traction with a lot of the changes in SEO and everything, but could potentially be seen by new prospects or anybody that's getting referred. We want to make sure that their author profiles and everything are built out, and really we're positioning them as being the ones who have the topical expertise. So just some ideas around what you could be posting on these different leaders' accounts, starting a conversation around a super relevant industry topic, right? A specific how-to guide on a topic relevant to prospects, if that's equity compensation or Roth versus traditional, retirement accounts. Story of the why, telling the story of why you founded the practice, or the why of why you're bringing on a new team member, or just sort of giving that sort of behind the scenes look at the overarching values of the firm and sort of why you think that way, your overall approach. That can be really beneficial if it's told in the first person and done well from a personal account. Sharing a new blog that you have written, we don't like to see a lot of links, right? But you can share the impetus of the main thoughts, the key takeaways from the blog that explain some sort of complex idea. This always does well if you have some really interesting thoughts, but like relevant current world events that are directly linked to what your prospects or even your current clients might be wondering about, like offering some reflection, some thoughts on that from your personal accounts. And then if you want an individual award, reflecting on that as well, and like what it means for you and your clients. So just give you an idea, like those are some specifics around what you could be sharing. You really, we hear the word thought leadership a lot, but it's essentially like you're the expert, you're sharing around a lot of the different content pillars or content topics that you've decided will attract your target audience. And so if you want to use a funnel analogy, sometimes you put in like 10, 20%, there's maybe a bottom of the funnel type topic, but 80% of the time, you're middle of the funnel with those complex topics, you're top of the funnel with those, market headlines or current industry events, and you're sharing a lot of content to try to grow your audience and grow your reach. Did I miss anything on the individual account, you think?
Love it. No. I just was thinking of Downtown Josh Brown recently had a post about speaking and getting involved and, becoming a speaker at events, and his personal story there. And he had like 3 good takeaways or pieces of advice, that he would give to younger advisors or people in the, wealth management space that are trying to get speaking gigs. And it reminded me of that. He does a really good job of like storytelling.
He's incredible.
Incredible. Cheryl Penny does a good job from Dynasty right down the road from me here in St. Pete. He'll share some personal things like that, like things that you just mentioned. He'll share a lot about how he's proud of the team. The team just won this and that award, that kind of thing. But he'll share like personal things like, about his journey with Dynasty, family events, right? Like, I mean, honestly, with LinkedIn and probably many of the social networks, anything personal related, or you throw up a picture of you and your family on a trip and you're talking about, what it means to you and that kind of deal, like that personal reflection, those really do well engagement wise. And I've seen guys like that, kind of embrace the network to that end. So yeah, just a couple examples there.
And one of the implicit consequences that we've talked a lot with clients about is how much that personal branding not just helps with attracting new prospects, but also with attracting and recruiting talent to work, especially for like the more established firms. Like you build your own personal brand so you can better scale your practice. Like more of the advisors in the country know who you are as a result of a lot of the work that you're doing on the personal branding front, which is not like your number one focus. It could be, but it's usually not your number one focus. But this is just like one of the ripple effects of building out your personal brand.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you post from the company page? So here's a good example, like awards and key milestones for the company. We just hit 200 million in assets. We just won this Forbes award. We're on the fastest growing RIA list 2025, right? Those are perfect for the company page. Spotlighting a new employee, a new CSA, spotlighting the employees that you currently have. Like one of the best ways to bring credibility to the fact that you're a growing firm and you're more than just the leadership is to highlight and share with people all the different people that are in your firm. So we had a firm that has right in that $300 million range. Every week there would be a new spotlight on a different team member, and then we would just recycle them all the way through. It was a great way to try to get the word out on the company account, and not one that you would share from the personal account. You could do that from the founder, the reflection on that individual as an employee, but then that kind of gets rote, and it's like, how many times are you going to share it? Whereas on the company account, it's a perfect way just to get that exposure out there and build credibility for other members of your team. Testimonials and reviews, great where to show, make sure you're following all the rules with compliance and whatnot. But, sharing those Google reviews, sharing the testimonials that you have on your website, I don't see that enough. And I know it's just because people are a little bit nervous, but, with the SEC marketing rule a couple of years ago, we can do a lot of that and we can share a lot of it. And that's a perfect thing, again, for the company account. It makes people a little bit uncomfortable to share that from the personal account. Telling an individual success story, right? This is another way of highlighting an employee. This is a big one, explaining your process. So this will be more like bottom of the funnel content, but the specialness of your process, right? We just helped the client build out what they're calling the bedrock process, which is like a systematic approach to financial planning throughout the year, where they do something with each season. Perfect thing to share from the company account, right? Over and over again. You don't have to these are not one-off things, right? You can share the same thing every month because it's a huge differentiator. And it's not like you're wearing your audience thin like you would be on a personal account, right? So from a company level, that's a perfect thing to share. Mm-hmm. And then announcing any upcoming events, announcing, trying to promote the new live event webinar you're doing, the new client appreciation event. Those are just some examples of what you could do from a company level. So the idea is you got your personal leaders that you've positioned, the managing partners, the co-founders. They're driving their audience with the thought leadership, and people are subscribing to them. They're building trust with them, while at the same time, you're enhancing the credibility of the firm by sharing company milestones, company spotlight, and everyone's reposting, everyone's commenting and reposting, and that's how you sort of maximize engagement. And that's how I think the best way to thread the needle between this whole personal and company branding question. What do you think?
It's a vortex of reposting and commenting and reposting and commenting from individual profiles and company profiles. And you're saying that the more you do that, the more you can get your team engaged or involved in the promotion process, or especially with any social media tool. It's really simple. We've seen this before, where it'll usually kind of be met with some hype and some excitement in the initial stages. Okay, all right, team, CSAs, wealth managers, we're going to make a company post. We'd love for you guys to repost it with your thoughts. So it'll bring more visitors to the company post, but it's good for you and your network. And usually it's met with some hype and engagement, and then it kind of slowly trails off, just like, a lot of things. And, you gotta have to manage that change, I guess, and come back to it and just make it a systematic thing, or come up with a good process, like how you're going to share that post that you're asking people to repost or to comment on, and then what you're expecting out of them, in terms of how you want them to engage with it. We've even seen companies that make it part of the job description that, you need to engage in a certain number of these posts with a certain comment or a like or a repost with your thoughts. It's literally part of your job. That would be, maybe that's extreme to some people, but if you think about it, it's a net positive on the company overall, which then benefits the individual advisor in the end, right? Because a lot of times besides job security, there's profit sharing, there's equity comp involved. So you're really benefiting. It's a win-win. I think that can be even better if you can get that kind of engagement from your team. Not everybody's gonna jump in there. People have different personal preferences, and that's fine. But as much as you can, I think encouraging that, it does make a difference in terms of overall impressions of how many eyeballs you're going to get on your company page and on your individual advisor page, and then also engagement wise too. The better the posts do especially within the first hour, engagement wise, then the more reach the platform will give it. So yes, the vortex of reposting and commenting, we'll call it.
Nice. Love that. The only other thing I would say, just make sure people, on the personal branding front, this is my parting thought.
Parting shot.
My parting shot. Yes. So they've seen your posts. They know your name. They've followed you, right? They've seen you over a 6 to 12 to 18 month window. Make sure when they go into Google to look you up, right? Because that's how things work now, right? Like we go to Google just to look up brands. You're a brand, personal. Make sure they can find you quickly, whether that be on LinkedIn, but preferably a nice page built out on your firm website, right? Like you want them to be able to make that bridge and that connection between what they've been following for such a long time and the firm. And that's done with a really nice page. So that's a whole like SEO conversation that's important, just to make sure that people can find you. And that seems like it's a given, but it's not a given, right? So if you're listening to this, make sure just search your name real quick. See how many different renditions of your name you have to do in order to come up with your firm's website so they can find your bio or find your page. Because a lot of times there'll be a common name where they have to put advisor, or they have to put that's an important thing to look at, I think, is just to make sure that you have a nice bio on your webpage of your firm, so that when people actually do look you up, they can find you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So many times I think I've seen, like, you look up an advisor's name and the first thing you see is their broker check link, right? It goes, broker check, vendor.org, and it's him. And I think a lot of consumers don't know what that even is, or how to, make any sense of what they're seeing when they go to that page. Maybe some do, but yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, and it does get into the SEO piece of it, which, we discussed a little bit in the last episode about, nailing the phrase, which is your first name, last name, and then maybe your title, like, wealth management expert, or whatever that may be, like whatever that phrase is, and then getting your branded search for the company name nailed down exactly. And so, yeah, that's a really good point. Well, hopefully you found this helpful. If you'd like to talk about company branding versus individual branding specific to you and your firm, please send us a note. We'd love to chat about it with you. And talk about, kind of pros and cons and what we've seen and what we've tried with our other clients, and just try to make sure it's helpful and relevant to you. So we'd love to chat through that. Or if you know any other advisors, if you're a client listening to this, thank you for listening. Please believe me, that wasn't a beer. That was just a kombucha. It's an NA kombucha. So I'm not drinking on the job here. But yes, if you're a client listening to this and you can think of any other advisors in your network who, would stand to benefit from a conversation like this that we've had today, please send them this podcast. I'd love to get it out there a little bit more. So yeah, thanks for listening, and hopefully that was helpful. We'll be back with more soon. Okay. Bye now.